the summer of 1793, the French Revolution entered its fourth year, and France, instead of finding the freedom and order its revolutionaries had once dreamed of, now stood on the brink of chaos. In Paris, extremist factions had seized control. They sent the king to the guillotine and unleashed a bloody chapter history would remember as the Reign of Terror, a time when anyone suspected of disloyalty, even by a single word, could be executed on the spot. To save the newborn republic from tearing itself apart, the revolutionary leaders declared war on the Habsburg Empire, hoping a common enemy would unite the people. But instead of unity, the war spread across Europe. And in a very short time, France found itself facing a coalition of the continent's most powerful states, all determined to strangle this bold political experiment in its cradle. At the same time, inside France itself, entire regions rose up against Paris, horrified by the revolution's spiraling extremism. In August of that year, the Republic suffered another devastating blow. The city of Toulon, France's largest naval base in the south, home to a full third of the French fleet, joined the revolt. Worse still, the rebels threw open the gates to France's old enemy, the British Royal Navy, under Admiral Lord Hood, aboard the flagship HMS Victory. Without firing a shot, the Allies had struck a crippling blow to French naval power in the Mediterranean and seized a strategic foothold on French soil itself. At once, every Republican force in the region, about 19,000 men, was ordered to march on Toulon and lay siege to the rebel city. But they faced a serious problem. Most French officers had been aristocrats, and many of them had fled the revolution. The Republican army was desperately short of experienced commanders. Their overall leader, General Jean-François Carteau, was loyal to the Republic, but he had once been a court painter with no formal military training. To make matters worse, Colonel Don Martin, his artillery commander and one of the few professional officers he had, was badly wounded on the way to Toulon. At that moment, a Corsican deputy of the National Convention, Antoine Salicetti, put forward the name of a fellow Corsican as a replacement, a 24-year-old artillery officer passing through Toulon on his way to the front. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte, or Napoleon Bonaparte. Bonaparte was a trained soldier, but he had seen almost no real combat. Even so, Salicetti was impressed by his sharp manner and his fiery Republican convictions, especially after Napoleon wrote a short pamphlet attacking those who lacked loyalty to the Republic. General Carteau agreed to give him a chance. Toulon itself was strongly defended by solid city walls and more than a dozen forts and redoubts. Inside was a powerful Allied garrison, 2,000 British troops, 6,000 Spanish, 6,000 Neapolitans, and 800 Sardinians. To break Toulon, artillery would be absolutely crucial. But when Bonaparte took command of the guns on September 16th, he found only a handful of worn-out cannon, too few trained gunners, and a serious lack of powder and shot. With instinctive drive and relentless energy, Bonaparte went to work. He requisitioned unused guns, trained infantrymen to serve as artillery crews, set up a new forge and workshops, and had 100,000 sandbags hauled in from Marseille to build new gun batteries. Working almost without rest, he built up a formidable artillery force, 64 officers and 1,500 men, serving around 100 cannon, howitzers, and mortars. Within days, 2 new batteries were in place, La Montagne and Sans-Culotte, names steeped in revolutionary spirit. From these positions, French guns could now strike into Toulon's inner harbor, forcing Admiral Hood to pull his fleet further inside. But Bonaparte wasn't finished. He proposed a bold plan: seize Fort Leguillet, a key height overlooking the harbor. Once heavy guns were installed there, the British and Spanish fleet would be unable to remain at anchor. Admiral Hood would have no choice but to withdraw, and with him, the Allied troops on which Toulon's defense depended. General Carteau agreed. On September 22nd, French troops attacked Montcaire, the first step toward taking Leguillet. But Carteau committed only 400 men instead of the 3,000 Bonaparte had urged him to use. The attack failed, and worse, it alerted the Allies to the danger. Within 48 hours, they rushed in thousands of reinforcements and built a new fort, Fort Mulgrave, armed with 20 heavy guns. It was so strong that French soldiers nicknamed it Little Gibraltar. In mid-November, a seasoned professional finally arrived, General Dugommier. He immediately recognized the value of Bonaparte's plan and gave it his full support. Now promoted to major, Bonaparte set about building even more batteries, preparing for the decisive assault. One forward battery was so exposed to enemy fire that soldiers refused to be assigned there. So Bonaparte gave it a new name, La Batterie des Hommes Sans Peur, the Battery of Men Without Fear. And suddenly there was no shortage of volunteers. It was an early glimpse of Napoleon's gift for inspiring his men, a gift that would define his career. On November 30th, British General Charles O'Hara tried to seize back the initiative. He led an attack on the new French batteries. At first, the Allies succeeded, overrunning the positions and spiking the French guns. But Dugommier and Bonaparte personally led a fierce counterattack with superior numbers and drove them back. O'Hara was shot through the hand and captured. 12 years earlier, he had surrendered to George Washington at Yorktown. Now, he found himself surrendering to Napoleon Bonaparte. In the early hours of December 18th, 1793, in storm winds and driving rain, the French launched a major assault on Fort Mulgrave. Wet gunpowder made muskets almost useless. Bayonets and musket butts became the main weapons. Bonaparte led the second wave in person. In the chaos, his horse was shot from under him, and a British sergeant drove a bayonet into his thigh, a wound that came within inches of ending his life and changing the course of European history. But in the end, the Allied garrison was overwhelmed. Fort Mulgrave fell. Soon after, Leguillet and Balaquier also fell into French hands. By the next afternoon, 10 heavy guns were in position at Leguillet. The Allied fleet now lay squarely within range. Admiral Hood had no choice. He ordered an immediate evacuation. In the confusion, British and Spanish parties tried to destroy as many French ships and naval stores as they could. Even so, 18 ships of the line slipped back into French hands, a huge missed opportunity for the Allies. Thousands of Toulon citizens, terrified of Republican reprisals, begged for places on Allied ships. 14,000 managed to escape. Many others drowned in the chaos. Those who remained would face the revolution's wrath. The next morning, Republican troops marched into the city. Executions began almost at once. For 2 weeks, around 200 people a day were put to death. Allied propaganda later tried to lay the blame on Bonaparte, but there is no evidence he was directly involved. What is certain is that France's young republic was now fighting back on every front. And with the fall of Toulon, the Allies had thrown away a golden chance to ignite more rebellion, cripple French sea power for good, and perhaps even overthrow the revolution. Instead, the French Republic had survived one of the greatest tests of its existence. Thanks in no small part to the skill, energy, and iron will of a 24-year-old artillery officer, newly promoted to brigadier general for his role at Toulon, Napoleon Bonaparte. This was his first step on the road to greatness, and for Europe, it was the beginning of 21 years of almost unbroken war. If you want to follow the full story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to comment. What do you think made Napoleon a military genius?